what is the nonprofit industrial complex? What is it made of? Why does it exist? And who are the main players?
Okay.
I'm opening up a can of worms.
So it's like any industrial complex, like
Yes.
it literally, the military in particular, like it exists to perpetuate itself.
Mhm.
Like military industrial complex doesn't exist to create peace. It has to have war in order to exist, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing with the nonprofit industrial complex, which includes, it includes philanthropy, like the folks that are actually like putting their money in, whether it's private foundations, corporate foundations, whatever. It includes the actual actors, the activists who are doing the work, the organizations that accept that those funds to make it happen. And it also, I would actually argue that it includes, our government who actually looks to that, because again, the nonprofit industry actually has its own kind of, there's like a part of the government structure that allows for it to exist, to do the kind of work that the government says maybe should be done on more of a local level. Like literally there's a tax designation for it. So they play a role in it as well, as far as I'm concerned. And, and even in the private sector plays a role too, because it becomes this really interesting way to get the kind of private sector work done that, it just happens that way, right? So especially when it comes down to development. So, but the main players are both philanthropy as well as the nonprofit community or organizations that actually do that work.
Right.
A non-governmental association they're called sometimes. And so yeah, it exists to perpetuate itself, because if you really stopped, just like look at the numbers, because in most other parts of the world, if you look at the numbers around anything and the data, and you look at the data and see the results of the way money's being spent, just in the States alone, if you look at the billions and billions of dollars that's spent on, the social ills of our country, you realize that none of the actual outcomes have gotten much better. And because we often do it the same exact way. And, we haven't really changed, in any real way, how philanthropic funds are spent in communities. It often is it's obviously a very top-down approach that, is more that assumes, I think, that poverty is a cultural attribute. We need to make life a little easier for the people that are in poverty, not necessarily change it, but just like manage the poverty so that, their lives are a little better. Because if it was really about how do we literally change the way that our communities are developed, so that the health outcomes are different, so that the educational attainment is different, we wouldn't be doing the same exact things, because we have lackluster results at pretty much every turn. And so that's the complex. They still exist. And so do the problems.
They definitely exist. It's these institutions, these organizations, entities that the public objective is to solve the problem, but they end up perpetuating it.
Yes.
And that always creates this infinite loop.
Totally.
Napoleon had once said that never ascribe to malice what can be adequately explained by incompetence. Out of all these entities in the nonprofit industrial complex, how many of them do you think are intentionally manipulative, deceitful? And how many of them do you think have their hearts in the right place, but maybe they're just misguided in their approach?
I would say the larger, I'm really hoping that most of them are just not willfully looking at the outcomes and going, I'm contributing to this by my work. And I'm going to continue to do that. I honestly think that there's this whole crazy idea that if we just try a little bit harder at this, it's going to be different. Just like, no, try something different.
Yeah.
How about that? And I definitely think about, frankly, just the tools of capitalism. The fact that, it's a tool. It's like, I think Desmond Tutu, talked about that famous quote of his, like, a knife, it's a tool. You can cut a piece of bread and share it with a friend, or you could like plunge it into a person. Same knife, different intentions. And I feel that if you look at capitalism, the same kind of tools that literally created American slavery were the same tools that created Black Wall Streets, which were these thriving areas and cities that happened right after slavery, and that Black people, by hook or by crook, figured out ways to create these beautiful, economic ecosystems, and just culturally and every other way, that really fed their spirit, their wealth generation opportunities, just their culture, and they were there. And it's just like, so what was different about them? Because right now, and then for the one in Tulsa, at least it was bombed from the air when white people got like really stupid about, thinking that Black people shouldn't have really nice things. But I do really think that we should be thinking about how do we apply the same tools that created wealth for, a certain segment of our population, and we didn't apply those same tools to others. And I think that's a question that is not asked very often, because there's always a program, to help poor people through the nonprofit industrial complex, but it's almost never to really do the thing that will impact wealth generation opportunities, because we know that economically disempowered people are really easy to push around. So if we're not going, how do we create access to opportunity in that way, then we are asking the wrong question. You cannot look at a person and just think, oh, we're just going to make it easier for them to live through their like horrible life. No, how about we like get them out of that life, give them opportunity so that they can have the kind of life that anybody would consider worth living. And yeah, in Boston, I understand that the average net worth of Black people is like $8, opposed to like 100 or so thousand for white families nearby. If that isn't enough for people to go, maybe we should rethink like how we're doing things. I don't know what is. But apparently it's not enough, because instead I keep hearing more and more and more and more and more about what people need are just only more affordable housing for very poor people. It doesn't, there's no aspiration in terms of their ability to be something other than poverty stricken. But again, if you just look at low status communities as that's all they're ever going to be, that's how you treat them. And we're not being self-reflective as a society and going, what have we done that's literally exacerbated everything that we say we're trying to stop?
It's easier to hope, or I guess it's better to hope that these entities are just ignorant, just misguided, and then if they're more self-reflective, things will change. But what if they're intentionally deceitful, manipulative? Does that make your fight so much harder?
I'm sure some of them are completely understanding of what they do. No doubt.
How do you tackle that?
Have other people who don't feel that way do other things. That's because the only way you're going to, because this is a game of show and tell. It really is. And so that's why even when I was running a nonprofit, we did project-based and economic and environmental developments. We were totally solutions-based. It was like, look, at the end of the day, like people need to see something different. They literally need to, because if it was, it wasn't there before, but oh my God, there's something there. Like, wait, just to give them something else to look at and to think about and to consider, and as like a change. And it was never easy to do, but also even just people, you realize that there's like so much trauma that people experience, and that there's a part of us that we don't even believe that a change could happen. Like, I can't even tell you how many times when we first started the park on our waterfront that I spearheaded, and it was a dump. We've been using it as a dump for 30 years. It was a street end that dead ended at the Bronx River and that had been dumped on for 30 years. Like for all my life, like I did not know that you could get to the river from anywhere in my neighborhood, because there was like dumps along it, and another industry, et cetera. And so when I finally did see it, and then had a chance to really work to create what is now a national award-winning park, it was so crazy, to be there as people would walk in and then be like, who's this for?
Yeah.
What do you mean, who's it for? Like, literally, did you just walk here from your apartment 2 blocks away? And it was just like, but it's really nice. Like, nice things don't happen here. And just in that stuff like that literally like cut me to my core. Because when you realize that people just automatically assume that their neighborhood is never going to be anything that's going to speak to them, that's going to make them feel good about it. And that when something nice does show up, they go, can't possibly be of ours. That's trauma. Like, and we've totally exacerbated that through how we've been developing our communities, low status communities in particular, for all these years. And we can be better.